This video is brought to you by Fallen Dominion Studios. Check out their website at fallendominionstudios.com. Hey there folks, welcome back to the Dice Odyssey. I'm Kaz, and today I'm going to be bringing to you a review of a game by Tasty Minstrel Games called Downfall. This game's for 3 to 6 players, it's 90 to 180 minutes, and it's for 14 up. And this game is basically a post-apocalyptic game. It's kind of a futuristic feel to it. You know, as in most post-apocalyptic games, bad things have happened, and the human race is trying to figure out how to handle it. And they've got limited resources, and they have to figure out how to gather those resources. You're going to be building bunkers. You're going to be waking up survivors from cryogenic sleep. You're going to be, utilizing technology, tech trees, and trying to grow your faction, all the while making sure your people are fed, and you possibly might have to fight other factions as you continually move out into their territories, exploring the land around you. So definitely a lot of exploration in this game. So anyway, I'm going to give you just a quick brief overview of how it plays, and I'm going to come back with my final thoughts. This is going to be a general overview of Downfall. We're by no means going to hit every single rule that's in the game, but we want to give you an idea of how to play. There is a quick start guide that gets you going if you've never played before. Currently, we're going to just use the 3-player setup. Everyone at the table is going to get their own items ranging from airships, survivors, food, bunkers, outposts, and the like. You also get technology cards, which will be used in your tech tree, and you get a hand in cards that you're going to use for drafting later on. You got a track board that's going to track several different things. One thing is it's going to track events and random events that come up. The different kinds of hexagons are going to have all sorts of terrain types and resources on them. For example, the plains and the clean waters produce food. The mountains produce stone. The bombed cities produce metal. The burned oil fields produce oil. The wastelands don't produce anything, but a full hexagon will give you 1 point. Now, there are polluted waters with abandoned cargo spaces. They start with any 2 gathered resources of the player's choice. Some hexagons have 2 different terrain types on them. These do count as 2 different areas. Some even have 3. Now, there are going to be radiation icons on your terrain, as well as dead zones. Dead zones are places that you do not need to go into because you will easily die, and they cannot be recovered. You can go into areas with radiation icons as long as you have the proper shielding for it. Now, for example, if you see this here, it'll show there's a radiation icon of 1. Well, you have a survivor there. If there was nothing there with a symbol on it that would shield you from it, that survivor would die at some point. As long as you have a bunker or an outpost or equipped survivor with at least 1 shielding on it, then it protects everything from that 1 radiation. Now, if it had 2, you would also have to have 2 different things with icons on them. Once an area that has radiation reaches 3 radiation, it becomes a dead zone, and everything in that area is destroyed or killed off. There is a way to remove radiation in the game, but we'll get to that later. When it comes to resources, any resource that is on this side is considered a raw resource, and it cannot be used under normal circumstances. But if you flip it over, this is considered a gathered resource, and this can be used for whatever you need it to be used for. You can also store resources in bunkers, outposts, or even your cyber storage. Airships also can store a resource. Now, in your handing cards are winter cards. You're going to set those up according to player count and remove however many are needed. Now, you're going to draw 6 cards, and any of those that are winter cards will be discarded, and you can redraw for new cards. Every time you discard a winter card, it's going to move the event token on the event tracker. And it is possible it'll trigger an event, but we will get there shortly. Now, once you have a hand of 6 cards, you'll take 2 of those cards out of your hand and put them into your reserve. Out of your technology card deck, you're going to take the cellular regeneration card and you're going to stick it right here underneath your war area. Now let's take a look at the events on the board. The first thing you would have done was draw 1 card. Now we go into pre-action events. This is where you resolve any conflict or random events. Now that event tracker, as it moves, it's going to hit different things on the board. The first thing would be the spoilage event. You have to destroy all unstored gathered resources. So if you had anything left out, they're going to be gone. The raw resources are fine. You also have to feed all of your survivors. And for every unfed survivor, you get -2 victory points, or you could kill off 1 survivor and you only get 1 negative victory point. There's also the fallout event where you actually spread radiation, and if any of that radiation accumulates in an area with 3 of them, then you will create a new dead zone and everything in that area will be destroyed. There's also the conflict event, which we will cover more in depth later on. There's also random events that can come up. For example, one may say each player may remove 1 radiation from any space. Another one could say all bunkers are worth +1 victory point at the end of the game. But also you could have one that could hurt you for the rest of the game. Major command actions may not be played. This is an ongoing event. At any time, any player may choose to lose 1/4 of their victory points rounded up, or 1 bunker to remove this effect for themselves. Now you'll resolve any of the conflict or random events, and then to start drafting, you'll do the choose and pass phase. You're going to select a card from your hand, and you can play it face down, or you can place it in your reserves, and then if you do that, you'll play a card from your reserve. You'll then pass the rest of your hand, which should be 3 cards. You'll put your passed cards token on top of them to the player on your left. The next thing you'll do is you'll resolve actions. You'll reveal played cards and resolve them from lowest to highest number if the order matters. And the final thing you'll do in that round will be post-action events. Resolve any fallout or spoilage feed events, which we covered a moment ago. Now on each card, you'll have different kinds of actions from when it comes to major actions, which will be on the left side of the card. This will be the full extent of that action, to the minor action, and you can choose either one to do. And the card will tell you exactly what you can do when it comes to your minor actions. First thing you can do is gather. For each of your regular survivors in a single space, you get to choose 1 raw resource, and you can turn it over to the gathered side. Now that can be used for anything you need. And don't forget, at any time you can store any of your gathered resources in outposts, bunkers, or cyber storage. Now you could regrow and excavate. You can place 1 food at each of the areas that supply food as long as you occupy them. And you can also excavate. You can place 1 matching raw resource at each space with one of your outposts. Another action you can do is reinforce. For each of your bunkers, you get to choose one of these. You can gain a survivor. You could gain one of these different resources. You can gain a point on your culture track that's associated with wherever you are on it. Or the final thing is you can gain all 3. Now the culture track is very special because if you gain a point on that, it will allow you to do a minor action. Another action you can take is a build action. You can spend resources from your storage or any space you control to build on any space you occupy. One thing that you can build is an equipped survivor. What you would do is you'd spend a metal, and then you can flip your normal survivor over to an equipped survivor. Keep in mind, equipped survivors cannot gather. Only your normal survivors can. Now equipped survivors also give you radiation protection and battle strength. You can build an airship, costs a metal, has a movement of 2, it can store at least 1 resource, and carry 2 survivors. You could build a bunker. Bunkers have battle strength, radiation protection, and they can store 3 different things, and you can also use them to reinforce. You build an outpost. It has a radiation protection and a storage capacity. It can also be used to excavate. In your build category, you may also spend 2 oil or any 3 resources to remove 1 adjacent radiation. This will put you up on the environment track as well, which adds into your in-game points. Another action you can take is command. You can place a command token anywhere you want. This will add to your battle strength later on. You can spend up 2 movement points on separate units. So basically you can move your units how you want. This will also lend to you being able to explore the map. You can move into any area you want, explored or not. And if you move into an unexplored area, you flip that tile over. Now you may also spend 1 oil to place another command point down or gain another movement point. So another action you can do is do research or war. Now if you do research, it allows you to purchase or just gain a new technology. For example, you could do the warships. It will cost you a metal and an oil, and each of your airships now contribute +1 to your battle strength in all conflicts. Or you could even do radiation shielding. This one's free. Each of your airships provide 1 radiation protection and may be moved without a survivor aboard, so they now have automatic pilots. Another one you could do is environmental reconstruction. For 1 metal, you may spend 2 oil and 1 of any resource to remove 2 adjacent radiation, which puts you 2 extra points up on the environmental track. When you do a research, you go ahead and stick that card underneath whichever area it goes in. You could also do the war part of that. You could initiate all the conflicts you're involved in. All you're doing is comparing command points and whatever battle strength you may have. And the winner of that conflict gains 2 victory points. The loser still gains 1 victory point. If there's a tie, nothing happens. The winning player may then destroy or convert any 1 outpost, bunker, or airship that the losing player owns on that contested space, or kill one of the loser's survivors, causing the losing player to lose 1 victory point. If there are resources stored in a building or airship that is conquered, the winner gains control of all of them. Now, any losing player survivors are able to be moved away to an adjacent space, and certain rules apply to that. Now, if there's no conflict that happens because of no battle strength or command points, then peace happens, and you get +1 victory point for every 2 spaces a player occupies. When the final event happens, it triggers the end of the game, and you resolve every single event that is listed there. Now, you tally up all your points. Whoever has the most at the end wins. Now, there are some other rules in the game, like when it comes to the leader cards. Each faction's going to have their own leader, which will give them a boost in particular. For example, this faction has the engineer perform a major gather action. Up to 2 of your regular survivors may gather from adjacent unoccupied spaces, moving the resources gathered this way into their space. Now, the nice thing about leaders is if you pass this card to someone else in the draft, if they use it, the owner of this card, which would mean the green faction, may gather with 4 of their survivors. Let's get back to my final thoughts. When I first heard about this game, the post-apocalyptic theme was drawing me in. I was very excited to play this. Did it meet my expectations? Yes and no. In some ways, I really liked the way that this thing is set out. There were some heavy amounts of positives. There were also some good amount of negatives as well. Let's go ahead and hit the positives. Number 1, the theme. Post-apocalyptic theme is one of my favorite themes. It's just, I don't know what it is. It's something about it that draws me in, and I just like the whole idea of survival, you know? And I think it's maybe the main draw is, man, there's limited resources. I've got to figure out how to keep my people alive. I like that idea. I liked it in Fallen Land, and I also liked it in, Wasteland Express, those themes and ideas that are in there. Next thing I want to hit is the production quality. As a general rule, it's good. It's very good in some ways. Is a little lackluster in others, but overall I liked it. I did like the fact that the player board had everything you needed. I mean, you almost didn't need the rule book at points, but this thing had everything you needed, well laid out. Most of it explained everything you were going to do in the game, from the tech tree right there to the costs and what the bunkers and how to equip survivors and how to get your airships out there and things like that. And also it explained the phases of each round, and I really love that. I mean, one of the best player boards I've seen in a while, to be honest with you. So this is awesome. I wish every game was this thorough on their player boards. Not all of them are, sadly. So that was an awesome thing. The tiles were good. They were well laid out. The pieces in the game were well laid out. The airships were good. I just kind of, and I know this is not the deluxe copy, and I know they had a deluxe copy that had a different version of these, like I think the mini version, but the airships, you had to put them together, and I felt they were a little chintzy, right? I don't know what it was. It's just a little chintzy, but they worked. They were fine. Everything else seemed to work fine. I really liked the artwork in the game. It was definitely very thematic, definitely drew you in a little bit more into that post-apocalyptic theme. Now, when it comes to the mechanics, I really had fun with this. The tech tree system is one of my favorite styles of systems in games, building up something to be stronger. It's like an engine building in a sense. I really like the idea of being able to build it up in such a way that my faction is going to be different than your faction. Now, if you use the leaders, it's going to be even more different. That was another thing I really liked, the fact that even if you use your leaders, you're getting a really powerful ability to use, but even if you pass the card to someone else, you're still going to benefit if they use that card, and that was awesome. That was one of the coolest parts of the game, because I just love the fact that they included that. The drafting system, I absolutely love drafting in games. It was very smooth here, very simply laid out, and I loved the major minor parts of the cards. I love the fact that if I couldn't find a card I needed necessarily with a major action, there was a possibility I could find it on a minor action. That wasn't always. Okay, and there was a few frustrating turns here and there, but overall that was cool that they at least included it, and it gave you an opportunity to sometimes strategize, but a lot of it was more tactical stuff as well. I also like the random events that came up. There are cards in the deck that can hurt you. There are a lot of cards that can help you, and you could be in a really bad situation and all of a sudden, oh no, something worse happened, or something good happened. And so it's cool because it keeps the game fresh, and it's not going to be the same game every game, and that goes back to replayability and variability. Let's go ahead and hit some of the negatives here, because there were some definite negatives in this game. Now, some of it was from our perspective, just subjective stuff, and some of it I felt really it's something I figured that maybe the game could have been tweaked better. You know what I mean? Number one, this game is a massive table hog. Okay, it takes, even like I said, I don't want to play this with more than 4 players because the map keeps getting bigger and more expansive the more players you add to it. The sucker goes up to 6, you know? And so I didn't play with more than 4, and I don't ever want to play with more than 4. Okay, and it's not even because of so much of the time. The time would have been that bad because we figured out ways to kind of speed things along a little bit without tearing the rules up. This has to be one of the most table hoggiest games I've ever played. There is a ton of upkeep in this game. Okay, now I like heavy games. I like games with a lot of upkeep. That doesn't bother me, right? As long as the game is designed well and it's something that I can see myself come back to playing regularly, and I'm just itching to play it, I can forgive stuff like that. And it's not even so much just with the rules, it's just with the pieces. I mean, you could have 1 billion pieces, and obviously hyperbole, but you could have 1 billion pieces in your little area alone, and it's gonna take you a little while to figure out what you wanna do with them. And that leads me into one of the biggest complaints I have about this game, is not only the upkeep and the table hogness of it all, but it's like a double-edged sword. I almost wish the tiles were bigger because, man, when you get so many of the tokens and the ships and the bunkers and the outposts and the survivors on one area or even a couple of areas, it looks like a cluttered mess. It just looks messy on the board. And sometimes I had people in the game that were telling me this, that they couldn't even tell at times what area they were actually still in. They'd forgotten about it because all their stuff was so cluttered up there on the board. The only way they could kind of tell was by looking at the resources themselves, what each area produced. But then if they had like a couple of airships on one spot, especially if you get one of the tiles with 3 areas on it, oh my gosh, that's insanity. I mean, it was just too much on one little small area, you know what I mean? And granted, that's partly due to the way you're playing, but it also can be how the game's going, not just how you're playing necessarily. It could be just that you're getting a lot of stuff, you know, and you just haven't gotten the cards you need to do the upkeep on it. And so that is a huge detractor in this game, when you need to know what you have at times to be able to play the best hand that you can get, and also choosing the cards you need, because you're like, oh, I don't have the resources to use this card, so I need to use this card. Oh, darn it, it was under that, that airship. That happened so many times to many of us in the game, where we were sitting there going, well, we forgot we had it because there was just so much upkeep on the board, so much clutter that you couldn't remember where and what you had at times. And that, I know, and again, if it was just me saying that, maybe it's just me, but pretty much every single person at the table was saying that. And I don't mean like everybody had the exact same complaint about it, but they all agreed that that was a problem. And again, this might not be a problem for everybody, but everybody in our group agreed with this. This was multiple games in. Don't get me wrong, once you get to learning more, you're able to handle that a little better. I also felt that the combat was a bit weak. It just was. All you're doing is adding points. It was very simplistic combat. To be honest, I would have been fine if there was no combat in the game. I just felt like it was kind of like an afterthought, personally. Doesn't mean it's awful. Doesn't mean it shouldn't be there, but I just didn't care for it, you know? It was okay at best. I don't want this to sound like an overly negative review, because it's not. The game in and of itself is fairly well designed. There were some many things I liked about it. So for me, what do I give this out of a rating scale? 10 being the best, 1 to 10. I give it about a 6.5. It's a decent game. It's got some really cool ideas in it, and I like the ideas overall. But I feel like some parts of the execution could have been so much better. And here's the thing. If somebody asked me, do I want to sit down and play this game with them? There's a chance I'd say yes. This is not a game I'd necessarily turn away. What have you played Downfall? What did you think of it? Do you like post-apocalyptic themes? Do you agree or disagree? Let me know down in the comments. Again, this is my own personal opinion. You may disagree, and that's fine. We can disagree. That's okay. Thank you so much. You have a blessed day, and game away.